Hello, everybody. For today's topic, we are going to talk about the first Gulf War and the Kosovo conflict in the 1990s. My name is Montel, and my co hosts are Glenn and Donavon. We welcome you to History Seekers. Today, we will break down the important events that led to the US led interventions in the Middle East and the Balkans, two hotbeds for conflict to this day. In this episode, we will break down all the things that happened, like why has the United States military engaged in the Gulf War and Kosovo, trying to reverse Iraq's invasion of Kuwait due to the threat to regional stability and oil supplies. Hey Glenn, can you explain what the goal of the international coalition was?
Yeah, the goal of the international coalition was to reverse Iraq's invasion to Kuwait. The UN mandate is the intervention was authorized by the UN Security Council to liberate Kuwait, but it lacked the mandate beyond the immediate goal. A major challenge is facing the coalition was the potential for a prolonged invasion with unclear long-term goals. The influence of the military action in the first Gulf War and Kosovo was continued to fuel debates on military intervention and humanitarian aid. What was the citizens' goal reaction to the conflict? It's obvious that a lot of them were forced to move out of the area. They had no choice but to move for their safety. Hey Donovan, can you tell us about the first Gulf of War?
The first Gulf of War was a war waged with a partnership of force from 35 other nations, led by the United States against Iraq in response to Iraq's invasion and annexation of Kuwait. The United Nations demanded Iraq withdrawals, imposed an embargo, and gave Iraq a deadline. This is one of the first time almost the entire United Nations united to accomplish a goal. This is different to financial and technical assistance, has been one of the most negative issues in the discussion of the United Nations Framework Convention and climate change of today.
We are going to take a short break. We'll be back in a moment. And now we are moving on to understanding the U.S. military action in the 1990s. The Persian Gulf War was an international conflict that was triggered by Iraq's invasion of Kuwait on August 2, 1990. Iraq's leader Saddam Hussein ordered the invasion and occupation of Kuwait with the apparent aim of acquiring that nation's large oil reserves, canceling a large set Iraq owned Kuwait and expanding Iraq's power in the region. It was the first international crisis of the post-Cold War era, and the U.S. led response would set important precedents for the use of military force over subsequent decades. And now we're moving to the Kosovo conflict. I wonder what was the Kosovo conflict about. Hey Glenn, can you explain what the Kosovo conflict was about?
It's an interesting conflict. Kosovo conflict is a war that took place from 1998 to 1999, stemming from the suppression of Kosovo and autonomy and the subsequent repression of ethnic Albanian by Serbian leader Slobodan Milosevic, leading to an army conflict and NATO intervention. The diplomatic negotiation began in Rambouillet, France in February 1999 but broke down the following month. On March 24, NATO began airstrike against Siberian military targets. In response, the Yugoslav and Siberian force drove out all of conflict ethnic Albanian, displacing hundreds of thousands of people into Albanian, Macedon, and Montenegro. The NATO bombing campaign lasted 11 weeks and eventually expanded to Belgrade, with significantly damage to the Siberian infrastructure acquired.
Hey nephew, what on earth was the NATO's role and the international challenges?
The NATO's involvement in Kosovo and its transformation to military invasion to the UN-authorized peacekeeping operation was played to the key role in evolution of the alliance strategies and political agenda. These events occurred in Kosovo in 1999, and their interventional repercussions are arguably to make that year to separate the both of NATO's post-war and the evolution of interventional order. NATO's military operations in Kosovo and the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia were undertaken without the strict authorization of the United Nations Security Council and weren't aimed at the end of preventing the human abuse, but the narrative remains highly controversial.
These interventions fundamentally changed the way NATO and the United Nations respond to crisis throughout the world, as this was the first time that nations came together to stop aggression and violations of another nation's sovereignty. There were a lot of things going on in this conflict, of course. U.S. policy evolved during the pre-war crisis. Three national interest justifications emerged as basis for it: the need to guarantee an uninterrupted flow of the Middle East, the need to counter the threat to the Middle East posed by Iraq's military arsenal, especially its chemical, biological, and prospective nuclear weapons, and the need to ensure peace and stability in the Middle East. George Bush claimed that the Gulf crisis was about aggression and not oil. A case can be made that no hostile power should be allowed to dominate the region. The need to prevent an Iraq invasion of Saudi Arabia was a key consideration for Washington. The threat could have been countered without war, through deterrence containment and the economic embargo of Iraq. However, it became clear to end the crisis quickly that a more forceful solution was required. In 1980, when in the wake of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, U.S. policymakers worried that Moscow would seize control of the Persian Gulf and blackmail the West. Interestingly, the United States at that time never intended to use Armed Forces Break (OPEC). In August 1990, the crisis was far different from the situation in the year 1980, when in the wake of the Soviet Union of Afghanistan, by granting Iraq the ability to control the world oil market, the United States and other affected nations were understandably thoughtful of the distributions of oil wealth in the Middle East. Hey Glenn, what were the key takeaways and the lasting impact?
The Kosovo War lasted from June 11, 1991 to February 28, 1982. The battle left both leaders dead and ended the Turkish victory. The collapse of Siberia and the completed encirclement of crumbling Brazilian empire by Turkish armies. The impact of the Yugoslav and Siberian forces caused the displacement between 1.2 million and 1.45 million Kosovo Albanian. After the war, maybe about 200,000 Siberians, Romis, and other non-Albanians fled Kosovo, and many remaining civilians were victims of abuse. The battle marked the only time in the history of Ottoman Sultan was killed in battle. Siberian manpower was depleted and had no capabilities to large armies against future Ottoman campaigns.
Hey Donovan, what does it mean to be ethnic?
They're a group of people who identify with each other on the basis of perceived shape attributes that distinguish them from other groups. To recap all the things that happened during the conflict in the Gulf, there were many things going on after one thing to another, like the ethnic Albanian fought ethnic Serbians and the government of Yugoslavia in Kosovo. Basically, the ethnic tension between the two and the collapse of Serbia. The aftermath of the Kosovo War conflict in June was the NATO and Yugoslavia signed a peace accord outlining troop withdrawal and the return of nearly 1 million ethnic Albanians as well as 500,000 displaced within the state. Thanks for listening to History Seekers. Please subscribe to Jack Badkey.